Welcome, everyone. My name is Xiomara Rodriguez, and I am the Communications Director for Discover Puerto Rico. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us during this industry update. Today, our executive leadership team will share information about the latest research, marketing, and sales strategies we have developed as we prepare for Puerto Rico's reopening to external tourism on July 15th and reassure travelers that the island is safe to visit. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's industry update will be translated simultaneously into Spanish. Also, today's presentations are available in Spanish on our industry portal, puertoricodmo.com, so you can download the slides and follow along. La presentación del día de hoy tendrá subtítulos o closed captions en español. Si usted desea activar la función de subtítulos en español, oprima el botón etiquetado Closed Captions en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Elija la opción que dice Show Subtitles para ver los subtítulos en español. Si desea ver el tracto completo de la traducción, puede seleccionar la función que dice View Full Transcript. La presentación que utilizaremos el día de hoy está disponible en español y puede ser descargada desde nuestro portal de la industria puertoricodmo.com. After the presentation, we will have time to answer questions, but feel free to send your questions as we go by using the Q&A feature, which is the bubble labeled Q&A at the bottom of your screen. During today's industry update, we will discuss great information, share insightful research, and go over the destinations plan as we prepare to reopen. You'll hear from our CEO, Brett Dean, Research and Analytics Director, Alicia Valentine, Chief Marketing Officer, Leah Chandler, and Chief Sales Officer, Ed Carey. Now, to get things started, I'll leave it with Discover Puerto Rico CEO, Mr. Brett Dean.
Buenos días y saludos a todos from your DMO, Discover Puerto Rico. I hope you, your loved ones, and your team are safe and healthy. We know this is a very busy time for you, and we hope you are beginning to see the light at the end of this dark tunnel that we've all been through. Like you, we recognize the COVID-19 pandemic has caused massive economic damage to our island and our industry, and we look forward to once again welcoming visitors to our island in the near future. First, let me take this opportunity to applaud you for all that you have done to survive these challenging times. The global tourism industry has been severely impacted, but no destination has faced what you have endured. From Zika to Irma and Maria, earthquakes, and now a global pandemic, the people of Puerto Rico, and specifically you, the tourism industry, have earned the admiration of many worldwide for resiliency and determination in the face of adversity. And now, together, we begin to write yet another comeback story. And this one will be our finest. 2 years ago, your DMO opened its doors. And that's a credit to many of you who worked for years to combine all off-island tourism and marketing and sales under one roof. I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to tell you what an honor and a privilege it is for me and each member of our team to serve you and represent our island. Together, we have accomplished great things. A vast library of research, data, and analysis to guide and inform our decision-making, most of which is available to you via our industry portal, puertoricodmo.com. A huge collection of multimedia assets that showcase what is truly special about our island, which is available to you to help market your businesses. Consistency of messaging and promotion, which is differentiating our island and, according to independent research, strengthening our destination brand. High-performance sales, advertising, and service strategies that give us a competitive advantage even when we are investing less in promotion than our competitors. Unprecedented levels of earned media coverage highlighting what's unique and special about Puerto Rico. And creative marketing steeped in the rich, vibrant culture, natural beauty, and extraordinary history of our island, not to mention great cuisine, unrivaled experiences, and amazing attractions. These advances, combined with the hard work that you apply daily, are just a few of the reasons why Puerto Rico set a record pace for recovery of tourism in 2019. And while 2020 has not started off the way you and I had hoped, the same reasons that brought people here last year are still present today. We just have to work together to bring your business and our industry back as quickly as possible. Amidst all the doom and gloom, there is some good news on the horizon. First, people are beginning to travel again, more quickly than some expected. And the research affirms that we have what many travelers are looking for. Second, airlines are flying again, and the results in June exceeded most expectations. Looking ahead to the fall of 2020, the airline schedules recently posted for flights to our local airports demonstrates that airlines expect Puerto Rico's recovery to begin very soon. Third, despite the challenges presented by COVID, we've seen bookings by travelers, travel advisors, and meeting planners in recent weeks. Of course, the level of activity is far below what we would normally expect, but it offers further evidence that the recovery of travel and tourism is underway. And you'll hear more about the research and trends that are guiding our efforts shortly. For us at Discover Puerto Rico, your DMO, a top priority is working together with you to accelerate this economic recovery. Of course, this is important to you. It's also important to the 84,000 plus people in Puerto Rico who were employed in 2019 as a result of tourism. And it's important to our government partners, knowing that last year, tourism generated $700 million of tax collections. That's almost $2 million each day. We are committed to leading the recovery of tourism in Puerto Rico. In fact, we began working on the COVID recovery plan the day the first restrictions were put in place. Now, this plan is based upon research, data, ongoing trend analysis, and also industry best practices. It includes creative advertising, positive publicity, impactful sales tactics, consistent messaging, and highly refined strategies to target likely travelers, travel advisors, consortia, and meeting planners, all designed to deliver the right messages at the right time. You'll hear more about these plans later in this webinar. Of course, this plan requires a modest investment in tourism. I say modest because in good times, Puerto Rico only invests about 4% of that $700 million of annual taxes you generate into off-island promotion. However, we know that we faced increased competition as we prepare to reopen tourism. Every destination throughout the world has their comeback plan, and most have already stepped up their marketing efforts. And as the research shows, there will be fewer people traveling. So more competition for fewer travelers means together we face a huge challenge. Our plan specifies 3 different levels of investment. The top line is what we were investing prior to COVID. That middle line puts us in line with places like Aruba and Bermuda, and the bottom line puts us in line with destinations like the Bahamas and Jamaica. And of course, none of these levels compare to the investments made by places like the Dominican Republic, Hawaii, or Florida, all of whom invest substantially more. You can be certain that your team at Discover Puerto Rico is ready and eager to activate at any of these levels. As you will note, no matter which level we invest at, the government of Puerto Rico gets a great return on its investment, both in terms of jobs created, taxes generated, and also the economic impact. No industry can match the return on investment and quick impact of tourism. Ultimately, the question is not if we want to recover. We must have tourism to enjoy a healthy economy. The question is, how quickly do we want to come back? By working together and making a sensible investment in tourism, we can bring visitors back in the fall, enjoy a great high season, and get your business back to normal within 12 months. If we invest less, we'll come back, but it may take a little longer. Now, as you're probably aware, our funding comes from taxes collected by tourists at local lodging establishments, such as hotels, paradors, and independent rentals. We usually receive about 1/3 of those taxes that you collect each year, but given the current situation, the budget outlook for off-island promotion is still uncertain. So for the past 4 months, we've been working with our partners in the public sector to identify alternative funding sources to help revive tourism. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Puerto Rico Tourism Company, the Department of Economic Development, AFAF, and the Fiscal Oversight Management Board for their assistance. We remain hopeful that funds for off-island tourism promotion will materialize soon. But for now, we have activated the next phase of our recovery plan using the resources that we have available today. Now, this is made possible for several reasons. We made numerous reductions in our expenditures in recent months. This included reductions in payroll costs, promotional investments, and operating expenditures. We successfully attained a payroll protection program loan from the federal government. We discontinued several contracts and renegotiated others. And of course, we paused much of our paid advertising until now. The plan currently in place will allow us to continue the promotional efforts that have been underway in recent weeks and to step things up with our marketing efforts, which to date have performed very well. It will also allow us to continue attracting positive earned media coverage and selling our destination with a digital focus and delivery. We hope to receive additional funds to supplement our efforts. But like you, we are prepared to make the best use of what we have available to us today. And regardless of our budget size, you can be certain of this. Your DMO has not and will not stop promoting Puerto Rico, ever. Your DMO will continue to look for innovative ways to promote our destination. If we cannot outspend our competition, our goal is to outwork and outsmart them. Your DMO will make the best use of whatever funds we have to promote you, your business, and the entire industry as best we can, always committing to generating exceptional results for every dollar invested through us. And your DMO will continue to work together with you and others who are committed to helping tourism recover. We are fighting the worst crisis ever in the history of Puerto Rico tourism. For us, this is not simply about promoting tourism. It's about saving our industry. It's about protecting 84,000 jobs. It's about helping keep the 5,100 businesses and organizations that we promote alive and healthy. To do this, we must all work together. This is no time to attack or criticize each other, but rather to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate for the good of Puerto Rico. This is precisely the time when everyone on our island who wants to see tourism come back must come together as one for the benefit of our island. And together, we will write another amazing comeback story. And now I'm pleased to turn the presentation over to Alicia Valentine, Director of Research and Analytics, to share with you the information which guides our marketing and sales strategies.
Thank you, Brad. I'll be reviewing some highlights of recent research, but there is an abundance of data available right now, as there has been for the past 3.5 months. Hopefully you're receiving the weekly research email where Discover Puerto Rico is distributing relevant data related to the recovery of the industry and consumer sentiment surrounding what they expect in returning to travel. Just as Puerto Rico's hotel occupancy fell faster and more severely than the rest of the US, this past week's data indicates lodging demand could increase more sharply. The 6-point increase in demand last week was bigger than any weekly increase across the rest of the US. In the 2 most recent weeks of reporting, we've seen hotel occupancy climb 13 points. It took the rest of the US more than 7 weeks to see that kind of lift. And though the island never officially closed to tourists, we know much of those recent gains are from residents traveling within the island. But we are seeing good weekly pickups in hotel bookings for July 15th and beyond. With correlations between the opening of communities and increased cases widely publicized, consumers' concern about the pandemic worsening increased significantly this week. Though for the most part, there was a feeling since early April that things were getting better, there's been a significant shift in the past 2 weeks, with consumers feeling like the situation is going to continue to worsen. However, this isn't deterring consumers' consideration from travel. The proportion of Americans saying they're done traveling until the pandemic is over continued its decline. This seemingly contradicts the increase in cases. Consumers are becoming more comfortable with the measures being put in place to stay safe. This includes being willing to provide proof of a negative COVID test prior to arrival at an island destination. A number of islands are requiring consumers to provide documentation of a negative COVID-19 test prior to arrival, and this does not appear to be a deterrent, with over half of American travelers having no problem submitting to a test. Another quarter said that while they wouldn't like it, they would be willing to have the test in order to travel to an island destination. In fact, nearly half of consumers consider island destinations more attractive if they require coronavirus tests pre-trip. The proportion of travelers who consider destinations to be more attractive due to the testing requirement is 4 times greater than those who would view it as less attractive. But while positive about providing testing documentation, requiring visitors to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival is a major deterrent to island visitation. Having a clear understanding of what is required of arriving consumers is key to being able to message about the island's opening. The research shows that Puerto Rico has the kind of product consumers are looking for as they ease back into travel. Consistently, beaches and rural destinations have topped the types of trips consumers are looking to take. Destination Analysts tracks traveler sentiment quarterly for their reporting on the state of the American traveler. Beaches and water sports and visiting friends and family were the only 2 trip drivers that increased as travel motivators since January. So given the importance of visiting friends and family, the diaspora market will become even more important to short-term recovery. Discover Puerto Rico recently surveyed consumers with an oversampling of diaspora to understand this important audience better. As would be expected, they are considerably more likely than other consumers to anticipate visiting the island in the coming year, making them the low-hanging fruit for marketing conversion. But it was also encouraging to see that in the markets where Discover Puerto Rico has focused resources in the past year, there has been an increased interest in visitation to the island. Of course, available resources mean this targeting is limited to a handful of U.S. markets. Across the rest of the U.S., where there's not been investment, there's not been the same kind of growth in the interest in visiting Puerto Rico. This research is from Strategic Marketing and Research, a destination-focused market research firm who's evaluated Puerto Rico's position for the past few years. And as part of that most recent research, we saw a significant increase in the image of Puerto Rico on attributes that were key in the development of the Discover Puerto Rico brand. Here, the image attributes are rated on a 5-point scale, and in evaluating hundreds of destinations, SMARI Insights has found that an average rating for destinations is about a 3.75, and ratings of 3.9 or above are good, with only about 25% of destinations garnering these higher ratings. With the most recent evaluation, consumers in these primary target markets where Discover Puerto Rico has focused resources now give the island ratings considered to be in the top 25%. But when we break out these brand attributes by consumer experience and interest with Puerto Rico, those ratings improve to be considered in the top 10% by those most familiar with the island. And SMARI Insights experience ratings above 4.1 are considered to be in the top 10% of all destination ratings. The diaspora, those who have visited the island in the past 5 years, and those who intend to visit in the next 2 years give significantly higher ratings than other consumers. This research indicates about 40% of the US fall into one of these more favorable categories, increasing to half of travelers in Discover Puerto Rico's primary markets. In those primary markets where there's been focused investment in paid media, there's also a strong increase in familiarity with the Discover Puerto Rico brand identity. Next week, Discover Puerto Rico will host a webinar focused on research. SMARI Insights will be presenting additional data from this study, which will review Puerto Rico's competitive position, as well as the reach of the paid media and its influence on consumers' interest in visiting. So if you'd like a deeper dive into this research, please join us next Tuesday for the research webinar with SMARI Insights and Adara. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Marketing Officer Leah Chandler, who will detail current and future marketing activities as we continue to move these measures.
Thank you, Alicia. As we have shared in each presentation, the DMO is actively working against a crisis plan built specifically to address issues related to COVID-19. As a reminder, this plan is available in English and Spanish on our industry portal, PuertoRicoDMO.com. We have recently moved into phase 3 of this plan, the rebound phase. This phase includes a ramp up of paid media, amplification of our readiness message through earned media, and the implementation of what we call a bridge campaign. In this phase, we continue to see travel restrictions evolve, and a critical mass of tourism-related businesses are open or are in the process of opening. Discover Puerto Rico recently released a condensed consumer-friendly version of the Visitor Health and Safety Guidelines. We're working now to update this educational tool with updates that were announced yesterday with new arrival protocols. Available in English and Spanish, this document is also available on discoverpuertorico.com and the industry portal for our businesses to share with visitors as well. We're currently developing a companion video to use in our social channels as we prepare visitors for what their experience is going to be like on the island. Additionally, we're working with our friends at Aerostar to amplify the new procedures and health and safety measures being executed at the airport. They recently launched an all-new website, sjuinsider.com, where visitors can find up-to-date information in English and Spanish to guide their arrival into SJU. This is a great segue to discuss the new protocols that are going to be implemented for arriving passengers, both visitors and residents, starting July 15th. Island officials are obviously prioritizing safety and security via these measures to avoid the spread of COVID-19 as we responsibly open for tourism. We understand there are probably going to be a lot of follow-up questions, so we encourage you to include those in the Q&A chat box, and we're going to do our best to address those concerns with the information that we have available. Here's what we know today. Face masks are going to be mandatory at the airport for all passengers, and passengers will be subject to a fine if masks are not worn. Beginning July 15th, arriving passengers must complete a travel declaration form from the Puerto Rico Health Department, in addition to providing a negative molecular COVID-19 test from the 72 hours prior. If travelers arrive on the island without the requested documentation, they will be offered a rapid COVID-19 test at the airport. Even if the test is negative, it will be mandatory for the traveler to quarantine until they provide proof of a negative molecular test on island. A list of testing sites will be available in Puerto Rico on site at the airport and online. If a negative molecular test is not provided, the traveler will be required to quarantine for 14 days or the length of their stay. Through our efforts, we are going to strongly encourage travelers to take the test prior to visiting the island, and we'll direct them to the right resources such as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to find the nearest testing center in their hometown. Through all of this, communications efforts remain critical. From an earned media perspective, we're leveraging the reopening date, our health and safety measures, and our new airport protocol to build confidence in consumers as they start planning and booking trips. Consumer and media mindset are shifting. As destinations reopen, we have to continue to pivot our messaging to break through all of this media clutter. And when it comes to communicating airport protocol with travelers, it's our priority to share the most accurate and timely information so that we can set the right expectations. Because this information is so critical and the process will be new to most, if not all, travelers, we are going to use a three-pronged approach to drive home the message: inspiration, education, and amplification. Our paid channels will focus on inspiration. As you've already seen through our Time campaign, we're leaning into beautiful, scenic images of our island that we know consumers are craving. To get consumers into the consideration funnel, we need to inspire them, turn their dreams into plans. Through paid media, which is heavy in wow-inducing visuals, we have the opportunity to reinvigorate those wanderlusters who are eager to travel again. Navigating the reopening process of a destination during a global pandemic can raise more questions than answers, and we're aware of that. This is why education is a key leg in our three-legged stool. Travelers are overwhelmed with information right now, and it's our responsibility to accurately share updates in a simple way that's easy to understand. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've developed educational materials for travelers, media, meeting planners, off and on island partners and travel advisors, among others, to ensure everyone stays abreast of the latest updates. We will continue this approach as we educate visitors about our new arrival protocols. DiscoverPuertoRico.com will be the main tool for the education process. In this slide, you see our travel advisory called out on the home page, and it is linked through several other key destination information pages throughout the site. Our important protocol steps will be very visible here, and an additional homepage call out will be added to be sure website visitors don't miss this news. We'll also use our robust social media channels to bring this information to light for consumers. Through explainer videos and static posts, we will aggressively push this message on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. By clicking on our travel advisory, visitors will be redirected to consumer-facing statements as well as a very detailed Q&A. This page is constantly updated and will serve as a powerful resource for consumers, but also for our industry partners who are working through their own messaging for their businesses. We've created a landing page where travelers can directly find our latest health and safety guidelines along with detailed airport protocol. These can be accessed at discoverpuertorico.com/promise, and the guidelines are available for download in English and Spanish. There's also a version of the health and safety guidelines geared towards the MICE segment, which is a very critical piece of our business. In the third prong of this approach, we will focus on amplifying the new protocols through earned media. We're sharing the latest protocol updates with top-tier media to ensure we're communicating the reopening in a responsible way. These are new procedures that provide an opportunity to position the island as the leader when it comes to health and safety. Our goal is to aim for headlines like these to instill confidence in traveling to Puerto Rico in the coming months. With the opening date set, headlines are already looking very different from what we presented in our June industry update as we shift our approach to a stronger call to action. Despite other destinations in the Caribbean publicly declaring they were open for tourism sooner than we did, we've managed to secure coverage, positioning Puerto Rico in a positive light and keeping us top of mind in outlets that our target base consumes daily. Of course, the airport protocol is a new topic of discussion that we know will generate strong media interest. As we previously discussed, the influencer community has been dramatically impacted by COVID-19, and now more than ever, we need these allies on our side. With Puerto Rico being officially open for tourism on July 15th, we're taking this opportunity to be a pioneer in the space by investing in influencers whose travel suggestions carry weight. We've identified key influencers who we'll work with to announce Puerto Rico as the first destination they visit post-COVID-19. They'll create content to inspire future travel, and we'll host them on the island before the end of 2020. Here's a sample of how this effort will be packaged from an earned media perspective to drive headlines that place Puerto Rico high in the ranks of top places to visit. As you can see, we plan to start hosting influencers and media in the coming months, and we look forward to collaborating with our on-island partners who can provide hotel rooms, experiences, and meals in exchange for coverage. Ketchum, our PR agency, has been conducting a media audit, and there's a solid number, we know, of top-tier reporters who are extremely interested in visiting. When it comes to earned media efforts, you notice we are leaning into tried and true tactics that drive home our message, and we'll execute against a robust editorial calendar tied to key moments in time to highlight what makes Puerto Rico unique. Here's a quick update on creative messaging. Today, we're executing against phase 2. In mid-April, as paid media was slowly turned back on, we launched a new campaign titled All in Good Time. This phase gently reminded travelers that it wasn't the right time to visit, but soon we would welcome them back to discover the island again. As a reminder, The spots here and all the spots that are part of the time concept are part of a coordinated campaign. This campaign was developed to specifically address issues around inspiration and consumer confidence as a result of COVID-19. This is not a brand campaign, nor does it mean we're changing the brand. A brand is much larger than a campaign. It's our positioning, our tone, voice, our visual identity, fonts, colors, logo, messaging, etc. These components, when they're aligned and operating in symphony, create our brand. A campaign is only one element of a brand, and it's a lever used to address specific needs, goals, objectives, audiences, and market factors. This is an area where we seem to see some confusion publicly, so thanks for allowing just a moment to help clarify. Regarding the time campaign, as we approach July 15th and beaches and other tourism drivers gradually open for recreation, consumers continue transitioning from dreaming to planning. We're now enticing those travelers with a direct call to action to book their trip, providing tangible incentives to choose Puerto Rico as part of our It's Almost Time campaign. In July, as we inch closer to the open date, we'll launch the final phase of the campaign, boldly declaring it's time. This phase is about excitement, confidence, empowerment. We're no longer just inspiring. We're giving people permission to act on their desires, supported with proof points like ease of access and no passport, as well as delivering on a new standard of safety in travel. And now a quick media update. As we've restarted the paid media campaign, our goal is to generate awareness and refill the conversion funnel. With a heavy focus on video, social engagement, and the reintroduction of OTT, we will stay top of mind with travelers as they move through that trip planning process. Beginning on July 15th, we'll connect with those travelers who are actively raising their hands for information about Puerto Rico or are already actively planning their trip. A strong emphasis on SEM and lead generation will position us to capture that consumer intent. Here, you're going to see a target geographic and demographic audience mix that we're pursuing with the media campaign. Notable changes include decreasing the bottom of the age range to 25 to capture a younger travel audience, and the introduction of a specific diaspora targeting and messaging campaign. As part of the targeting strategy, a market analysis will continuously be revisited as key factors evolve. We have created a formula with our partners at R&R and Miles to prioritize market selection, looking at air capacity, COVID-19 impact, and MRI data. Priority markets are listed here, but in fact, these have already changed in the past 24 hours as we continue to monitor this key data. New COVID hotspots have emerged rapidly in the last 2 weeks, and we've updated our market prioritization to take into account case numbers from the past 7 and 14 days versus purely looking at cumulative numbers. In doing this, we're able to move back into New York more quickly than previously anticipated. However, we're also going to be holding back on markets like Tampa and Miami until cases begin to decrease. This approach allows us to best balance our mission to drive visitation and economic prosperity for the island while also taking into account the health and safety of our residents. How has social been performing? In May, we had our highest performing organic Instagram post with nearly 9,000 likes. We're still finalizing statistics from June, and we'll share those in our next update, but we continue to see strong performance both month over month and year over year on social. And given the current circumstances that the world is facing, specifically the US mainland, we felt it was important to stand in solidarity and address the Black Lives Matter movement on our social channels. Our message focused on the African roots of the island and received overwhelmingly positive feedback from our audiences. In fact, it was one of our highest performing organic posts ever, reaching 309,000 people. Now live at discoverpuertorico.com/promise and accessible via the travel advisory, consumers can find health and safety guidelines for the leisure and MICE segment, as I noted earlier. PDF files are available in English and Spanish, And since the launch of these pages, consumers are spending more than 2 minutes on this page. And now a quick update on MICE marketing. Research shows that top concerns for meeting planners are contractual negotiations related to attrition and cancellation. We've recently requested group promotions from our hotel partners and will be launching a flexibility campaign. We will share with planners that Puerto Rico is flexible, agile, and will partner with them to plan successful meetings in our destination. This will also be pushed out through our strategic partner platforms, through our social channels, will be pitched to industry trade publications, and will also be used by our sales team. In replacement of paused media on June 23rd, we sponsored an important virtual summit, Navigating the New Normal, as another avenue to stay engaged with planners. We delivered our It's Almost Time spot to over 2,900 registered participants and were included in all event promotion. Planners are also requesting information about how meeting spaces will be designed post-COVID. We're in the process of requesting new images from our hotels, demonstrating how they will approach social distancing and other health and safety standards. As we've seen many of the trade shows in our industry turn virtual, we're developing strategies to make the most of these interactions with our customers and maximize existing partnerships. Pending, of course, our 2021 budget, we plan to take advantage of these opportunities so we can virtually meet with clients who are looking to book future business. For further information on our sales efforts and results, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to our Chief Sales Officer, Ed Carey.
Thank you, Leah, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. As we approach the reopening date, I wanted to start with a brief update on our efforts to build advocates for the island with our Puerto Rico Travel Expert Program. In the month of June, we graduated 88 new Puerto Rico experts for a year-to-date total of 9,902 new graduates. This means our monthly graduation rate is up by 116% over last year's monthly graduation rate. We're now making the important shift from pure education to a call to action. Each of these new graduates are now being offered a $100 incentive for their first minimum stay booking in one of our hotels. And of course, we intend to communicate existing and additional hotel offers through this platform as they become available. Of course, we have been able to reach 3,000 plus advisors since March through our webinars and presentations. We'll now work to engage this audience as well. These will be among the first organizations and advisors we target with the new promotions that all of you have submitted to us in conjunction with the deals page on our website, as we discussed at our last meeting. So we are on target with our plan to reactivate in phases and are working towards ultimately meeting in person with our customers in our major markets in the August-September timeframe, depending, of course, on existing conditions. In the MICE segment, we have continued with an aggressive education schedule and have delivered over 120 webinars to thousands of meeting planners across our existing partnerships and beyond. And during each of these interactions, we have been sharing important updates that we're receiving from all of you, as well as the latest from the government on the reopening phases. We also wanted to continue to share updates on meeting planner behavior as we have been since this restriction began. This month, we see that optimism planners have on booking meetings through the end of this year has lessened a bit. And more of them, or nearly 4 out of 5, believe that their new bookings will likely operate in Q1 of 2021 and beyond. And as you can see, there was a bit of an uptick in those that felt confident about the first half of 2021. And as Leah referred to earlier, I'm sure none of us are surprised to see that 75% of these planners expect that there will be flexibility in contract terms for the coming months. However, it's also very encouraging to note that the majority are hopeful that we will be more forgiving on cancellation terms versus doing away with them altogether. And we found this slide particularly interesting. There's no question that meeting planners are incorporating virtual components into their events. And they believe that these events will work well for their attendees, but They're less sure of how these platforms will help forward their actual business objectives, and even more concerned about how their sponsors will see the value of investing in these events. Now, this, of course, may change as these platforms evolve, but we think that it's becoming more and more clear that in-person events are simply irreplaceable. So we are locked and loaded, and we're ready to go on the meeting side. We will continue to refine our messaging and have also shifted to a call to action in the MICE segment. And as mentioned earlier, we are gathering promotions from each of our partners and are prepared to reach the largest audience possible. Our live site inspection protocols have been organized by specific property with our partners, and all of these have been run through our customer advisory board for feedback. And just as with the leisure segment, each of these actions has been phased on a timeline with the ultimate goal of fam trips and in-market presentations by August or September as conditions warrant. Now, this slide's a little bit hard to read, but we've been carefully monitoring lead generation during the crisis. And while there have been wild swings in activity from March until now, the last 3 weeks show more consistent pattern of stronger lead volume developing. So from March 1 through now, we've been able to generate 124 leads for nearly 80,000 room nights in potential business. And our active pipeline is down from the 270,000 we reported in June, but still a good base of business to go after once the dust has settled. And lastly, our destination support services team has continued to refine the virtual site inspection experience, as well as working with all of you to prepare for in-person meetings. We're working hard every day to bring the island and our properties to planners as best we can. And we're happy to say that our first in-person site inspection, ironically, takes place on July 15th. And we hope sets the stage for many to come in the next several months. So appreciate your time today, and I believe I will turn it back to Zia Mara for any questions.
Thank you, Ed, for such great information. We are going to get started on the Q&A portion, and our Q&A box has a couple of questions. We want to answer as many questions as we can. So before we get started, I want to let you know that we will not be able to offer the translation feature during the Q&A session. However, next week, we will send the Q&A document with all of today's questions and their corresponding answers in English and Spanish, as well as a link to a recording to this webinar, so you can replay it at your convenience. My email is also on the screen, so if you have questions or need any additional information, please feel free to reach out to me via email. A nuestros amigos que están utilizando el servicio de traducción, no vamos a poder ofrecer la función de subtítulos en esta sección. Sin embargo, les haremos llegar a todos las preguntas y respuestas en inglés y en español junto a la grabación de este seminario la próxima semana. Además de esto, mi correo electrónico está en pantalla. Pueden anotarlo y si tienen dudas, preguntas o necesitan alguna información adicional, pueden comunicarse conmigo a través del mismo. Now, let's get started. We've got a couple of questions here. Leah, I believe this question could be answered by you. There were some special offers, such as the third night free and some incentives that we're promoting on the Discover Puerto Rico page. Do you have any information on how many views or clicks those receive and how that section on the website performed?
I think that's actually a sales question for Ed and the leisure team. I'm not sure if those numbers have been pulled at this point, but Ed, do you have any information on that?
You know, it's funny, Leah. I was as the question is being asked, I was reaching out to our website team to find that out. So if I can get that in the next few minutes, Mara, we can come back to that.
Perfect. For short-term rentals, they have a contact form for the health and safety guidelines, and it doesn't provide a space for temperature or any information for the passenger. Do we have any information on that, Leah?
So I would say there's probably a couple of these questions that are going to be best answered by some of our partners, either the Department of Health, in some cases, maybe Aerostar or Puerto Rico Tourism Company. I would say that one is probably a Department of Health question. I'm certainly happy for us to aggregate some of these questions that we don't specifically have answers to today, and we can reach out to those partners to get those answers. And then when we post the public Q&A, those would be included, hopefully.
Perfect. We also have a couple of questions, as is expected, in regards to the new protocol at the San Juan Airport. So I'll go over a few of them, and feel free to chime in, Leah. Also with us is Antonio Duarte, the Chief Marketing Advisor for Aerostar, and I think between the two of you, we'll be able to handle these questions. So one of the questions is, do you know how many days in advance the COVID test must be taken prior to arriving to SJU?
And so I think that's an easy one. I think that's, the answer on that is 72 hours, which we mentioned in the presentation. So 72 hours before arriving. I saw another Q&A that was in the chat box that said a lot of places in the States require 2 to 4 days before they return those results. And we're definitely aware of that. And we have heard that concern from several other people. But at this time, with the information we have available, it is a 72-hour requirement.
Perfect.
Xiomara?
Yes.
I'm going to chime in, sorry.
Of course.
Otherwise, I may forget. But regarding the promotions on our website, there has been 42,000 page views since inception, with a 3-minute average time spent on page. So very good engagement.
Thank you, Ed. That's great.
You got it.
The next question is the quarantine while waiting for the molecular test on island limited to the hotels overall, or guests can stay in their room alone? So I guess the question is, can they roam around the hotel, or do they have to stay within their room while they're quarantined?
I think that's a question that sort of remains to be seen. I don't know if the responsibility there is going to be on the hotels or some other entity that would be mandating or enforcing the quarantine once people arrive there. At this point, I have not seen any specific information that says people are going to have to stay in their rooms. It only says that people should quarantine. Is that in the hotel property in general? Is it in their room? I haven't seen information specific to that. I'm not sure, Brad or Cia, if you guys have read anything different.
No, I think you've got that. And speaking of hotels, we also have another question asking if all hotels on the island are open and ready to receive visitors.
All hotels?
Yes.
No, I mean, all hotels are not open at this point. There are still some that are in the process of a phased reopening, and that's up to each individual property. That's not mandated by any sense. I think some felt like they wanted a little bit more time to make sure that they're able to implement the health and safety guidelines appropriately. So I think we'll see kind of a phased reopening of hotels over the next few months leading into fall.
Thank you, Leah. Ed, this question's for you. Regarding the MICE segment, will the hotels be equipped to do both in-person and hybrid meetings?
Well, we certainly know already that they are going to be equipped for the in-person meetings. In fact, we've been surveying most of our hotels, if not all of them, and a good majority have already been able to publish what their new meeting protocols and meeting setups are going to look like. So we feel pretty confident that they're in the right direction in that respect. From the standpoint of hybrid meetings, it is, really kind of more in the hands of the meeting planners, how they want that platform to work for them. Certainly, we have the capabilities, and I know our AV teams have the equipment to make that happen, but it's going to be ultimately driven by each individual meeting planner.
Thank you, Ed. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, Antonio Duarte, the Chief Marketing Advisor for Aerostar, is joining us today. And Antonio, we've got a couple of questions for you here. The first question is, how long will it take to get the test results at the airport?
Yeah, we will continue. Hi, this is Antonio Duarte. We will continue to have the testing with the National Guard at the airport, but that's not going to be the PCR test that is required to get out of quarantine. That's something that the traveler will have to do on their own outside the airport. So we will continue to have the monitoring with the tomographic cameras and the screening and testing and the information the traveler is going to share with us within the declaration web form. But the testing, it should happen outside the airport.
Thank you. Is there any communication with the airlines on a contingency plan on the new travel regulations for visitors? And also, when can we expect informative graphics on the adverse results this might represent to businesses locally?
Yeah, our staff already started communication with the airlines, and we know that the Puerto Rico Tourism Company is also doing that. So we're managing that. That's why we put the plan, and we're working on establishing that date, July 15, to start everything with them. But we are continually discussing this with them and evaluating the impact that this has. Our commitment is to have a safe travel for all people that want to come through our airport. So our priority will continue to be to have all the spaces clean, doing the educational signage, asking people for the mandatory use of masks. So the travelers that come to Puerto Rico, as we saw in the research shared today, they feel that we have a safe destination and it's good for them to come through our airport.
Thank you, Antonio. Brad, this question's for you. Do you have any information about when cruises are coming back to the island?
You know, the cruise lines have indicated as an industry they're eager to come back. Obviously, things have changed a little bit with the federal requirements, but every indication is that the cruise lines are still bullish on being able to bring cruises back to the island. I think we referenced this in prior meetings that we're probably going to see a shift within their industry, similar to what we saw after 9/11, where there will be maybe more of a focus on domestic destinations, recognizing that for some cruisers, the prospects of traveling to many countries with different requirements for entry and different requirements for validation may be a bridge too far at this point. So at this point, it's ultimately going to be up in the hands of the federal government and our local government to coordinate for when the cruises come back. But we do expect to see cruises re-entering the market later this year.
Thank you. I know, Leah, you went through what the new protocol would look like and how we'll communicate that to travelers at the airport. But there seems to be some confusion after hearing Antonio's response in regards to testing. So do you want to run through that once again? Because they don't really understand if testing is done prior to arrival or at the airport.
So I'll do the best I can, noting that, of course, Discover Puerto Rico does not own this process. We are learning, you know, at the same time as everyone else, what this new process is going to be, and it's our responsibility to communicate that and message that to consumers outside of the island. So we're learning as you are, but from what we understand right now, people are being requested to bring a negative molecular COVID test to the island with them. This is what Discover Puerto Rico is going to strongly encourage, and this is where we are going to place the bulk of our messaging emphasis. The more people who bring their negative COVID test results to the island, the better experience they're going to have, because if they get to the airport and they don't have that test, you're required to take the quick COVID test. While you wait for the results of that quick COVID test, you are to be quarantined in your lodging property, whether that's a short-term rental or whether that's a hotel. During that time, you are going to be asked to go and get a molecular test somewhere on the island. And the Department of Health will be providing a list of recommendations of clinics and places where people can go to get those tests. Sometimes those tests could take up to 8 hours to get the results. Again, the traveler must go back to the hotel and quarantine, or the short-term rental and quarantine, until those results come in. At the point they get a confirmation that they have a negative test result, they will in some way communicate that to the Department of Health. I'm unclear as to what that method is going to be. Is that sending your test results through an email? Is that uploading them to an app? Is that presenting them somewhere in person?
Yeah, I can add to that. And again, I'm aligned with Leah in terms of our role in our STAR is to enable public policy. We don't own the process, and we're collaborating with the Department of Health to do this. So you will have, when we are asking airlines to, and we're going to promote as well, that you need to take the test 72 hours before coming. We have to have that results. So you will have to include the results of a PCR test in the travel declaration web form that you will receive when you're traveling to Puerto Rico. That information is going to be connected to the Department of Health through the SARA Alert, a CDC application validated by the CDC that they're enabling. And that application will have all the information. If you don't have the PCR test, or you have, so you're going to be a flag in the SARA Alert, and the Department of Health is going to continue to communicate with you through the app until you have the results of a PCR testing that you can do on the island, and upload those results in the app, and that's the way that you will get out of quarantine. To clarify, our STAR will continue to monitor and use the thermographic cameras and other measures that we are doing to screen travelers, and we are going to continue to have the quick testing with the National Guard, but we cannot offer PCR testing to all the passengers that come through the airport. So that's why the testing should be done prior to getting to Puerto Rico. And if you don't have it, you have to start quarantine and go to do the testing on your own and communicate with the Department of Health through the SARA Alert app of those results. I don't know. Again, we're not the owners of the process. We're trying to educate and share the information that we have right now, as the DMO also is doing.
Thank you, Antonia. Leah, I've got a couple of marketing questions. How are you planning to pull back, or maybe be less aggressive on markets that are now COVID hotspots like Florida, but continue to be a top priority market for Puerto Rico?
So it's all a balance. And I'm going to ask Alicia to weigh in on this as well. But as I mentioned in the presentation, we have several different factors that are built into this formula. Air capacity is one of them. The number of COVID cases is the second, and MRI data is the third piece that filters into this funnel to help us select markets. As we've mentioned, the number of COVID cases that has been aggressively rising in Florida is certainly a concern for us. Meanwhile, we've seen New York come down significantly in COVID cases, and they've really been able to wrangle the virus there. So we are taking all of that into consideration. It's hard to walk away from a market like Florida, to be very candid, because there is so much airlift there and there is strong potential. It's a strong diaspora market for us. So we're coming up with a solution where we're going to be able to balance those that airlift and make sure that we're in the market, which I believe is Orlando. We can stay in that market. We're going to pull out of a couple of other markets, and this is dynamic. All of our media buys are optimized on an ongoing basis, and we're able to shuffle that investment to where we feel like we're making the most responsible decisions and also can produce the highest ROI. So Alicia, do you want to speak specifically to what we're seeing in the numbers related to Florida?
Absolutely. So whenever we take a look with our agency every 2 weeks in terms of what's happening with air capacity and number of cases, the Orlando market has more seat capacity than 5-6 markets combined. And so initially, when we were beginning to plan and New York had such high number of cases, that was a market that we were willing to sacrifice to be able to be in other markets. And now that we're seeing the spike in Florida, being able to shift resources to add New York, which is going in the right direction. But because Orlando has the most seat capacity, it is really difficult to say we're not willing to invest there. And again, as I mentioned, the diaspora market being especially important, that visiting friends and family being a priority. But again, the requirement that arriving passengers come with a negative molecular test hopefully alleviates those issues entirely. But again, continuing to look at that equation in terms of seat capacity, number of cases per population as well. So all of those are going into all of those decisions being reviewed constantly.
Thank you, Alicia. This question is for you as well, Leah. With all of these new protocols and screenings and whatnot that are being implemented, are you concerned? You mentioned the influencer program. Are you concerned about bringing influencers down to the island now when all of this is starting to take place and we are starting new protocols on the airport and in other facilities around the island?
I mean, am I concerned? I think we have to be very, very prudent with those resources that we're bringing into the island. We have to be cautious and make sure that, is the process ever going to be perfect? Probably not. Is there going to be any destination that is going to have a perfect process for these types of protocols? Probably not. We are not going to bring them down on July 15th. Obviously, we're hoping to have a little bit of time. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks for the process to flesh itself out a little bit and become a little more refined? That's the goal. On the other hand, we don't want to wait 2 or 4 months before we start bringing influencers down. Influencers and media in general can be a part of the education process, and that is the intention. The intention is that, by bringing down these people who have influential voices, who are speaking directly to our audiences, they can say, guess what? Puerto Rico's got new protocols that they have put in place in the airport. It's going to help keep you and your family safe. It's going to help keep the residents safe. Here's how my experience went. And we want them to be transparent with how that experience is. And, we have to rely on the local processes and the people who are putting those processes in place to work. And, certainly if over the next few weeks, we see that it is not working well, we would push those influencers back to coming later in the year. But we're optimistic that what is being put in place from a protocol standpoint is going to work. The kinks will get ironed out, and we'll start to bring influencers and media onto the island, as well as other clients like meeting planners and travel advisors who will help spread the word about what the protocol is and help educate people so they know what to experience when they arrive.
Xiomara, I would just add to what Leah just said. It's important to keep in mind the role and purpose of the DMO. Part of this, of course, is to strengthen the brand, but part of this is we're speaking to visitors and planners who aren't necessarily coming this month. If you look at our website and you look at a lot of the data that Alicia has shared, not only today, but in past industry updates, and the volume of research that's on our industry portal, we're often speaking to people who are thinking months in advance. So while all of us are focused on July 15th, and rightfully so, bear in mind a big part of our strategy and our effort is to speak to those travelers, the travel advisors, the meeting planners who aren't just thinking about July and August, they're thinking about September, October, and beyond. And so when we think about bringing influencers in, we certainly want to deliver a great experience, as Leah alluded to, but those influencers aren't just here to drive traffic in the next 60 days. In fact, much of their impact will be over several months. And if you step back and take a look at this in the context of what's happening throughout the United States and elsewhere in the world, you're seeing many destinations that open very, very quickly. In fact, some had occupancy rates of 60, 70, 80% in recent weeks. And many of those places are now battling with the second round of infection. So this does give our island a unique opportunity if we can deliver a great experience from the airport on forward throughout the travel continuum to demonstrate that Puerto Rico is a leader in this and that we've figured out better than other places how to balance this very challenging situation between public health and growing our economy. It's not perfect. Certainly we're going to have to all work at it together, but it does present a unique opportunity. And because Discover Puerto Rico is not only the messenger for travelers who might be coming in the near future, but travelers who are thinking about where to come or where to travel over the next several months. This is precisely the opportunity, if we can deliver the right experience and deliver the right message, and most importantly, execute on this when the visitors arrive, that we can put Puerto Rico ahead of other destinations.
Thank you, Brad. Ed, this question's for you. You shared about MICE and the lead volume increasing. The question is, has the mix of market segments of those leads changed in the recent months versus past years pre-COVID? You're muted, Ed.
Sorry about that. I lost my mute button there for a moment. You know what's changed most significantly, Xiomara, is we're seeing a slight uptick in association versus corporate business. And that's not a big surprise. You know, many of the associations are, really thrive off of bringing their members together and actually make money for their organizations by operating these meetings. They also have a longer booking time. So it's not a big surprise that we're seeing more association business now slightly than we are seeing corporate. Booking windows have changed. We are seeing now health, medical, tech, and tech. But we've always kind of seen those in Puerto Rico. We're just seeing them more consistently now, as well as financial, believe it or not, financial and insurance companies.
Thank you, Ed. Antonio, this question's for you. How long will that period that people will have to spend at the airport taking this test will be? And also, how will the hotels know if the guests are positive and that they need to be quarantined? Do you know if there is any issues with HIPAA law to be getting into this territory and asking for proof of a negative testing?
Yeah, the second part of that question, I think that's more for the Department of Health and the tourism company. The first part is that if they're going to do the rapid testing, the National Guard is right now managing that process, and the results of that, it's like 15 minutes. But again, that we will need the results of the PCR to confirm that you're out of the quarantine and you don't have COVID. We are using that as an evaluation because there's some, that data is still relevant and we can use it. But the results that will get you out of the quarantine are the PCR testing that's not going to be provided at the airport. You have to take that test prior to getting to trip to Puerto Rico, or in a location that is going to be identified by the Department of Health in the list of places that you can take the testing. Aerostar is not promoting any place to do the PCR testing. We are going to be sharing the information of the places in Puerto Rico around the island, because we know that we have an entire island that can be a possibility for our travelers. So we're going to share the official information from the Department of Health on where to take that test.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, but I have one last question. Brad, Leah, do you guys know when the National Park Service will reopen forts and other attractions?
I think they have released some information recently, and I expect that we'll see some updated information with their hours and plans coming out as early as the next couple of days. So I don't want to get ahead of the Park Service. So unless Leah or staff have any specifics that have been released, I do know that they were attending actually the last press conference the governor announced before yesterday's, and my expectation is they're going to be releasing some updated information. They're doing this in coordination with the national system. But they're also doing phased reopenings that restrict the number of people and group sizes and whatnot. So they're trying to balance between the local guidelines and the national guidelines. But I expect we'll hear some more details in the next few days.
Thank you. Well, before we go, I want to share with you the date for Alicia's research webinar that will be taking place next week on the 7th. And she will do a deeper dive on the information that she shared today. And then, of course, our next industry update that is going to be August 5th at 2 p.m. Be on the lookout for the information to register for that one. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next one.